Hey guys, Rue again, and today is a quick video. We are doing a quick in-between episodes. Kind of went over the Geneva versus King James and learned a little bit about King James and Sir Francis Bacon and perhaps why we should not be trusting anything from them. But in between the weeks, before we go on to colonization, different states, what land they took over, what Britain was fighting over, all that lovely stuff, and our independence. Before we get there, after having done information on the Geneva Bible, I thought it would be interesting if we looked at some images that were in old Geneva Bibles that were banned. So some of these images will be from that, and then some images are going to be from a kind of weird engraver from, I guess, 17th, 18th century, but don't know a whole lot about, could not find much on him. But his engravings are extremely interesting in the Bible. It's not the Geneva Bible, but whichever Bible those ended up being in, quite interesting. So here's some images, obviously first here. The first book of Moses, called Genesis. So in here we have, of course, pretty cool, not one of the major mind-changing photos, but still cool to look at. We've got the sun and the moon, some Hebrew lettering. Created good and fair, by breach of law, a snare. Dust for to eat must be my meat. There are some interesting creatures in this. A few of them. They don't quite look the same. I'll let you guys kind of pause and look over that if you want. We're going to move on. So unfortunately, I tried really hard and could not get non-blurry photo of this. This I have somewhere clearer, so we'll skip that today. But this, I cannot tell you exactly what it is. It's in 1 Kings. It's something to do with Solomon's temple. I have no idea what it is. I just thought it was interesting. If anyone knows, feel free to inform the rest of us. So this image is in Exodus. Kind of looks accurate, right? Egypt, a little bit, right? Got your, obviously, some features denoting Egypt. Again, though, I just want you to keep looking at architecture. Now, unfortunately, again, this one's blurry, but if you can, kind of start to make some of these out. Okay. Interesting architecture, for sure. Now here's another one that is kind of interesting just because you can see we're starting to get some more of the imagery now, right? We recognize these a little more, right? And the flower. And then we have crowns. Our wreaths. We have the angels, little baby angels. I'm going to start seeing a theme here slowly but surely. But one thing on this one, obviously we have this up here again. One thing I wanted to point out was this. I can't guarantee what that is, but it's definitely some sort of sphere that appears to be giving off energy source somehow. That is a guess, a theory, but it very much reminds me of the balls that would go in the fireplaces. It's either that or a portal. No, I don't know what it is, but it does remind me of those little spheres in the fireplaces. But we'll see. Now here's an interesting one from Genesis 21. Sarah said unto Abraham, "Cast out this bondwoman and her son." This one's interesting because the individual who did the engraving has a very interesting idea of architecture during this time. These engravings are done around the same time, so these are old. But interesting. Alright, here is the Royal Throne of Solomon. Blurry again, but architecture, right? Look at it. Right. Still not the most amazing thing I've seen, but pretty cool. Now here is the vision of Ezekiel. The whirlwind that came out of the north, or Akion, The great cloud, the fire wrapped about it, the brightness about it. This is cool. We have some sort of thing held up by creatures with the Godhead on top. Okay, cool. I like this. The firmament like unto crystal. The throne which was yet upon the firmament, where sat like the appearance of a man, the appearance of amber above and beneath the man. Much clearer image of these creatures. Instead of beautiful angels on top of the Ark of the Covenant, right? Really weird, short, winged creatures with faces. It's a little bit more, not quite as beautiful as you expect. Cherubims, yeah, they're interesting looking. Now, here's one of my favorites. The first figure of the king's house in the wood of Lebanon. The second figure of the same house. These are Solomon's house. Anything seem odd, guys? You guys notice the architecture? Look at these windows. Look at the shape of the building and the top. Okay, I mean, it's quite obvious, right? Just look at it. Look at it. This architecture, I don't know. In my mind, everything that I look at in the Bible, we're going to see more than this. This is just one thing. In my mind, I never would have thought the buildings would look some of the ways they'd been depicted by individuals back in the 16th and 17th century. Very perhaps Roman, some perhaps colonial, dare I say, right? Interesting, for sure. Just blows my mind looking at old photos that we're not allowed to look at from books that were banned. Alright, we have yet again another blurry one, and I apologize. These are hard to come across photos, but this is supposed to be Noah's Ark. Well, that's interesting. That doesn't look like any of what we have depicted Noah's Ark to look like, right? That is more like the city ships you've seen from King's build. They were very flat and box-shaped. That looks very similar to it. That is a very interesting depiction of Noah's Ark. Alright, now on this one, here's what we want to look at. We're going to start on the left side. Look at the tents. Certainly my people are tent people, but look at the style. What do those look like? Right? That style reminds me a lot, kind of like Crusaders. So let's take a look at the outfits, actually. Look at Andrew here specifically. The belt, the puffed shoulders, right? The hairstyle, okay? Look at the hair, the beard. What time period does this look like to you? His outfit's completely different, right? James, John, Philip, look what he's holding. Style of his outfit. Look at Thomas. These outfits, not what you would expect. And then look at this. Jacob in Egypt and upon his deathbed prophesied to his sons, right? This is a depiction of that time when he's prophesying to his sons. Look at the ball and look at this. It has the rings, see? And then it's interesting. It's not the style I would expect. Not at all. I would not expect all these to be here. But then again, in my last video, we saw that coin. Look at the city behind it. Right? Hebrew lettering. This goes along with the Bible, and look what's behind it. Look at the town. I'm not entirely sure what's happening, but it looks like they're handing out more. I don't know. There's ships. It's very, very interesting and goes along with the images that we find in this Bible. And then there's this one. Look at this coin. Look at the buildings. There are some, like, houses with chimneys that look like regular houses. There's some strange buildings here. They all have the spires. That's always been very important. What we know about Tartaria, that's the type of building that was around. But again, it's strange and it doesn't quite fit. The date on this coin is 1680. So we are all curious about the 1800s, and I'll show you some other photos here as part of my intermediate between episodes, because I'm about to go into American history and I'm not even sure if that's accurate. So that's why I want to show you photos first. This is stuff I found. But 1680, where on earth do we know of a place like this? Right? Odd. It's just gonna get more weird. Just wait. Okay. Here's where we get away from the Geneva Bible and we go into a very odd, can't find much information about artists who did engravings for Bibles in the 17th, 18th century. These particular images come from Exodus. And they took ashes of the furnace and stood before Pharaoh, and Moses sprinkled it up toward heaven, and it became a, not sure if that's bowl breaking forth, right? Upon man and upon beast. These would be the boils. I'm having a hard time understanding those two words, but essentially talking about the plagues, sending plagues upon Pharaoh. There's a king sitting here. There's interesting architecture. And then I think this is interesting. Why did we add this into the image? It's kind of going this way. Could this be a bush? Could this be fire? Or could this be mud and debris? I don't know. But it goes along with some architecture. And the oddity of the fact that this particular artist thought it important to depict Exodus in a modern time frame. These illustrations were coming about in a time when we're fighting a war. Perhaps a little bit before Revolutionary. I'm not 100% on the dates, but somewhere around Independence area. I find this interesting. Here we have, and the Lord did that thing on the morrow, and the cattle of Egypt died, but the cattle of the children of Israel did not. So we see some more regular type buildings, right? It's hard, when you zoom in, it's hard to see, but this kind of looks like a modern house, does it not? And then this looks like a modern government style building with the square coming out a little bit and then the shorter long one in the back. Interesting. It does look like quite the plagued area. It's kind of hard to tell from the images, but still, look at the architecture here still, right? Granted, this particular building would be where they keep the cattle. It's not going to be magnificent, but still. And they did so, for Aaron stretched out his hand with his rod and smote the dust of the earth, and it became lice. In man and in beast, all the dust of the land became lice throughout all the land of Egypt. This particular one, another Exodus image. Look at the architecture, right? Look at the crown. Look at what they're wearing. Look at the helmets. They're being plagued, so they're all kind of like probably they're scratching, their bugs all over them, but still, shield, helmet, architecture. And yet, the individuals, Moses and Aaron, are what? Still wearing what you would expect from simple people, but they're in a group of people that are dressed more modern. That's not a pharaoh, is it? I like this artist's thought process. Could this be literal or just trying to re-explain the Exodus in the idea of breaking free from England? It's possible either way. I'm not going to say which it is. You guys can come to your own conclusions, but it's a very interesting time period for these types of engravings to be showing up, right? And the Lord did so, and there came a grievous swarm of flies unto the house of Pharaoh. More Exodus, right? Look at the architecture. You see these? Look like balcony type stuff for the top of the roof. Look at this. Clothing. Very interesting to me. Now again, another one. And Aaron stretched out his hand over the waters of Egypt, and frogs. So this is a frog plague depiction. Again, the architecture. If this doesn't scream it more than ever, look at the decoration here. Look at this decoration above the doorway, okay? Look at that. We got little baby angels decorations. This is a modern style. We got a king with a bunch of soldiers. Right? Very cool. Now we obviously have Mary and Joseph here, but again, architecture. See the edge of that building there? See how thick these columns are and the type of stonework? This would be the large stone I would expect to see from the generation that did megalithic buildings. This one's interesting. Here's the crucifixion. Now, I would say that doesn't look like any depiction I've seen of Jesus. They do choose to go with the different style T-cross, and not the X, not the lowercase t. Definitely a depiction of Jesus, though. I will say that this particular image I find very interesting because that is closest to what I've seen as the first image that was depicted of Jesus. And it's not at all what you think of the long-haired guy, long beard, all that. It's not that Prince, whatever, the homosexual guy that they love to depict him after. There's a very, very, very old one. The oldest one we have. Looks like a young Roman. Basically meaning they wear the strapped sandals, right? But he wore a cover that was much like what the Romans would wear. Just a very simple one, not like really fancy clothing. And he had short curly hair. He had no facial hair in that particular one, but he just looked like your basic average nobody wearing some typical clothes that you would find available to people in that area. So I find it interesting that they went with this style because that looks way more like the oldest one that we have. Here's another Exodus one, and this one, again, you have the king, right, and the soldiers, right? The houses, you do have something. I'm not sure exactly what that is. It sticks up interesting. Not quite pyramid-like, not quite obelisk, but then the buildings look like your typical farmhouses, the basic houses that you would find out by the lesser wealthy individuals, right? But still very modern looking to me. So this one would be Sodom. This is the story of basically Sodom and Gomorrah. They got destroyed. So this is as they're being destroyed. You see the sun, I guess, is what's giving the light, or the light coming off from this direction. But somewhere in this direction, you've got light. Look, covering their, or he's scratching his eye. They're covering their face. Oh, it's so bright. It's too bright. And what they, not really sure what this person's trying to do, but it's very bright out. Heat probably might become, I don't know, this guy looks weird. I guess his eyes are closed. He's probably reaching because he doesn't know where he's going, but definitely interesting. Especially when you decide to look at the architecture again. Did we build our world, or did we inherit our world from previous generations and just keep cleaning it up, or in in the instance of America, just hold a fair and then say, oh, it's temporary, and then burn it all down so that we have no evidence of all the white cities and the alabaster cities gleam, right? They even called them white cities. And the song says, alabaster cities gleam. That's white cities gleam. Where's all the white cities coming from a song during a time period where this was an undeveloped nation? I mean, come on. Or at least not developed like that, not like the white cities. All right. This is the depiction and the architecture in Sodom. Here we have another image. Engraving from that time period. Again, with the architecture, right? And then we have this idea of the glow around the individual's head that we see around saints' heads, or Christ, or Mary, whatever. Right? But again, architecture, very cool. Here's Moses and Aaron with the people fleeing Egypt. Look at the attire they're wearing, pretty cool. But subtle things, perhaps. If we look at this hat, this vest appears to be connected to the skirt in a very familiar fashion from a more modern time. I kind of find some of these a little bit interesting. There's a little chest right here. It's this guy with his hat. I like the hat. This is oh, I like the detail on that guy's face. This is not what I would have depicted the dress of people leaving Egypt that long ago. I wish this were a little less blurry too. Lastly, this one ended up in the bunch when searching that artist. Published according to an Act of Parliament, January 1753. So in with all those images of Egypt being depicted like a modern society with a king, not a pharaoh, this image is found bunched with them all. And this particular name here is the same. A view of the foundling hospital, with the same artist name attached to it as some of the other ones, which depicted buildings kind of like this, architecture like this, but saying Egypt and the plagues upon Egypt. And you do even see a combination of style of architecture here, where we have some of those regular homes versus these magnificent ones, right? It's very interesting why this particular artist is associated with basically calling the modern king situation Egypt. Something to think about when we go into our next section, because we are going to go into the early stages of American colonization, and not exactly sure what happened, but we do know that those coins, as well as other things, pictures I haven't even shown here today, that we did have buildings like that, and the coins are from 1680, right? The only thing I can say, it's going to be difficult to nail down exactly what happened, because if you ask any history professor that's done enough digging and research, they'll tell you a lot has been duplicated and many years have been added to our history books. So we are going to get into some more topics, and we're going to go into some of the Cabbage Patch Kids stuff. I am going to mostly direct you to other people who handle those situations much better than me, but definitely wanted to cover the strange depiction that this artist seems to have, because we do know that the buildings were already here. We have plenty of images of uninhabited cities in America. And then we have stories of individuals going from city to city like it's nothing within a couple days. They're like, oh, we'll just pack up our stuff and move to another city. It's fine, no big deal. Because the cities were already there. It's very easy to move into a city if you find something's wrong with yours because you took over a city that's been demolished, but you're kind of trying to clean it up, but it has problems you really don't feel like dealing with. Move on to another city, right? The other question I have, and the last question we'll bring up here, is Israel. Jerusalem. We all know about mud flood in America, and we can't quite pin down the dates of everything because of the way that they've rewritten everything, but certainly we wouldn't find any issue with Jerusalem, right? That time period? What do you think? What do you think we're going to find if we go look at that town? According to history, it's a very bustling town. The city of Jerusalem, it's so populated and gross because there's so many people that they had to start expanding outwards in the time period of 1800s. Okay. Let's test that theory. Some of the first images, right? First photographs of the Holy Land. Does this look like a bustling town to you, or does it look like it's a demolished ruin to you in the 1800s? What do you think? How about this one? Temple of Solomon, Jerusalem. There's one person. So we definitely have the ability to get... I mean, I shouldn't have to say anything. Look at the photo. It's a ruins. Whoever is taking these photos discovered the ruins. Longitude, latitude 33. A ruins. Not a bustling city. This may be a sepia looking photo, but I can tell you right now that that roof on that building is covered in some sort of ash and not shining nearly as much as it should, considering it's gold and quite bright. It's shiny normally. That's dull because it's dirty. What happened here? Why on earth do we have photos of an empty Holy Land in the 1800s when it's supposed to be bustling and expanding? What happened in the 1800s? Whatever it was, no country was left out of it. These types of photos from the 1800s you'll find everywhere. You will find complete cities in America built for millions, ready to go. Not a soul on the street. You'll also find a lot of those buildings covered in mud and being uncovered. Covered like 2 to 3 stories high in some instances. And you see the process of them digging the buildings out of mud. 1800s. There was a massive event that affected the entire world that they broke apart into multiple events. And they covered it up. This should be the most damning photo. How do you explain this one, huh? This place is destroyed. So then the real story is, or the real question is, who discovered this and took over and decided to call themselves the people of this land? Who showed up here, do you think? They sent a photographer all over the world, or multiple photographers all over the world in the 1800s to catch these crazy photos. It's like the first people who showed up who were scouting, like a Lois and Clark type deal. They were scouting out the cities that were ruined to see which cities were good, could be fixed, which ones, of course, this one they would want no matter what. It's 3333, okay? You can't, this is the place. I'm just gonna leave it at that. 3333. What do you think? Bustling city, or ruins that still have yet to be properly cleaned. This looks like people just up and left. This is clearly devastation, like abandoned. You can see the patchwork. That's different than the work above, right? Looks like someone was starting to come in here and start trying to clean up the mess that happened. But you can see where they started what they did not get to. There's Bethany. Mount of Olives. Almost, if you look at some of the buildings, look like they've been mud flooded as well. They could have been built into the hill, but look at some of the towers on top of the hill. And look at the building on the right. Look at the bulbs on top of it. Details. Pause and take a look if you need to, but very interesting. Couple little stragglers outside the town, right? But really an empty city, much like we see in America, like we've seen in Australia, some of the architecture that doesn't belong. I find this one interesting. We have a retaining wall in the back. We have some buildings within the rock, perhaps, built within that. We have all of this has fallen down, and all of this has fallen down. We had a wall that came this way a little bit, and then we have mud over here. And then look at the destruction here. Some of the buildings are okay, but it looks like for sure that they're cleaning up this mess. You can see all the staining here. And then you can see where some of the wall here is still not fully. Here's where it comes at an angle here. That's a wall, but still has stuff on it. It's almost as if everything kind of went around these buildings, perhaps, and then came out down to the bottom. But look at the retaining wall. Looks like it took out a good portion of whatever was over here, but a few buildings survived. It's kind of what it looks like. Here's another angle at Jerusalem. It's an interesting structure here, not for that time period. And it looks more modern-like. But this is the 1800s, and this is like a ruins. So this is much earlier. I don't know what it is. Here we have Jerusalem from Mount Olives. You can see, again, and these would be the bulb with the spires. Look at the style of building over here, right? So, this place is supposed to have been really populated since the late 13th century. It became multicultural in the 19th century. This is the 19th century, so 1800s. This is when they got multicultural, not just starting to populate. Yet here we have a completely abandoned town of Jerusalem. Ruins, no less. I don't know if it just sat for so long that it just started falling apart, because this one doesn't look like it was bombed like some other ones, but there were some piles of mud, so maybe, I don't know. Again, another rundown building. Very, very old, rundown, abandoned, with a couple people standing over there. One dude, hey, check this out. These are probably the explorers that actually found this place. I mean, if we know anything about the elites, they probably knew it was there. Hence probably why there were expeditions to go find these places. Individuals who kind of knew that there were places out there, because they probably had a better idea of the recent event that caused all these places to be abandoned. They wanted to go find them again, because they figured they'd be empty, right? Or maybe they were trying to figure out how bad the problem happened worldwide. Yep. So who are these guys? Look at this dude over here. Look at all the overgrowth on the building. Photo that just looks like abandoned ruins. First couple people that showed up. before they even cleaned the place up. Look how dirty that dome is. No shine. That thing is colorful today. Even in Solomon's stables, it looks like dirt caved in. Just looks ruined. So what is one to think when faced with such evidence? This evidence is present all over the world in this time period. What really happened? And it's kind of important we figure it out, because American history does not fit any of the evidence. And apparently Jerusalem doesn't either, which I'm just finding this one out. I knew about these photos existing for America just as much as they do for the rest of the world, but I didn't realize Jerusalem, of all places. Same time period, same problem. We have a ghost world, not ghost towns, not a ghost country. We have a ghost world that is not at all mentioned in any of our history books in the mid-1800s. Well, probably earlier. This is them discovering it. That looks like it's been sitting for a while. So 18th century to early 1800s kind of makes you wonder what the truth is, doesn't it? It's really hard to say what we're supposed to believe. There are people that depict Egypt as a modern society during this time period. What on earth is the real timeline? I don't think we're going to have an answer until Yahuwah tells us. But we've been lied to. This is what I've been trying to show people. Trying to wake you guys up. America is not what you thought it was. Israel is not what you thought it was. Europe, meh, probably what you think it is. Or at least the Vatican, right? But our history entirely is a lie, our modern history. They covered up a lot. They covered up some very important things for a very good reason, and we're under a current delusion right now because our ancestors were not following Yahuwah. They brought us to this delusion, and it's time for us to break out of it. My goal is to do that, to help people see that. This picture, hopefully, is enough to show you that perhaps there might actually be something that we need to listen to these crazy people for. They got something here, don't they? How else do you explain away this photo? We got a lot more where that comes from. We got a lot of weird history to go over that does not work. Does not make sense. And looks like constant, controlled opposition. You think today's politics are weird? Wait till you look at the founding of America. That one's coming next, guys. Keep an eye out for it. That's the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed those pictures. If you did, like, subscribe, follow for more. And peace out.